the labor force participation rate has fallen by 3 percentage points since the recession began at the end of 2007. And two big things happened at once. One was people that were born in 1946, which is the beginning of the baby boom generation, turned 62 in 2008. That's when they first became eligible for Social Security, and you saw an increased wave of retirements. That factor is responsible for a little bit over half of the decline in the labor force participation rate. The second factor is whenever your economy is hit with a recession, that manifests itself as unemployment going up and some people being discouraged or maybe staying in school longer and not entering. That factor is responsible for about a quarter of the decline in the labor force participation rate. That leaves another quarter unexplained. I think there's two types of things going on there. One is trends that predated the Great Recession. If you look at prime age men, 25 to 54, their labor force participation rate has been falling since 1953, continuously for 60 years, year in and year out. For prime age women, 25 to 54, it's been falling since 1999. Those trends carried themselves forward, and there's something I think we should be worried about. Then the last thing is, I think there's some things unique to the Great Recession that have taken a greater toll on labor markets than you normally see in the wake of a recession. And I think you see that in terms of long-term unemployed, which is twice what it was going into the recession, even though the short-term unemployment rate has recovered. And I think you also see that in terms of fewer people re-entering the labor force than you'd want to see. So I think these are a bunch of different factors. They all have different answers, which is recover the economy, encourage more people to participate, and things like immigration reform, paid leave that would remedy the longer run trend.
Well, you don't know for those who may not have understood exactly what was being asked, generally we've had, since World War II, I'd say roughly 66% of the adult workforce in working. In other words, the people eligible to work was about 66% more or less, and it's gone down to about 63%. So if it was at 66% now, and those people could not really find jobs, the unemployment rate would be much higher. But because it's only 63% of the workforce who are really employed or really looking for jobs, the unemployment rate is lower than it would otherwise be. The real question to me is, are we going to accept an unemployment rate more or less of 6%? When I went to college, the standard textbook said that full employment was more or less 4%. Today, I think we're on the verge of beginning to think that full employment might be 5 to 6%. And if we accept that, that's, I think, not so good, because in effect we're accepting a lower goal to be able to get people to work. And I hope we don't accept 6% as the standard, but we're beginning to get close to that, because we seem to be unable to get the unemployment rate below 6.3% or so. And maybe people know, when you talk about the unemployment rate, you're really talking about people who've looked for jobs in the last month. So if you didn't look for a job and you're not really part of the workforce, you're not counting those numbers. Then the marginally attached numbers, in other words, the people who sort of would be looking for work if they thought there was work, is more or less about 12%, I think. Is that the marginally attached unemployment rate's now about 12%. We don't focus on those numbers so much, but that's really a much more important number to me, because that really takes into account the people who would like to work or would look for work if they thought there was a chance to get one. And I hope we don't accept, and generally we, being the whole government, doesn't accept a 6% unemployment rate as being full.